Hello everyone, my name is Lasmir, and man, do we have a cute little build to look at today. And I'm of course talking about the cherry tree park I have right here. I know cherrywood is a kind of old news when it comes to additions, but I had a blast making this. And we're just going to go through and we're going to showcase it today. We're going to go through all the little strategies I used to make all of the different elements that are a part of this. We'll talk about the elephant in the room, the giant cherry tree, towards the end of the video. But for now, let's start over here in the gazebo. Ignore all the random stuff in the background. That was just me playing around with the brush tool and world edit and all that. But if we look here, I think this is pretty indicative of the general style. I know chandeliers, not typical park decor, but I thought it looked nice. I chose to go with stone for most of the park. These are kind of like stone, brick, and stone palette for most of it. I feel like that is matches the most with the pink, and it has the most indicative of a park while still looking nice. Looks like I missed a slab over here. There we go. With the builds that aren't just trees, which there are many of them in this area, I tried to go for a consistent style with these very soft arches. You'll see these a lot. You'll also see them on the bridge over there, which we'll come back to later. Try to go for these soft arches going around. Have the nice arch, and then we have another little arch right here. This is more of an oval. And then I just tried to use the cherry wood in between to give it kind of a support structure with these kind of, I guess, logs going across towards the middle. And then I just filled in the area with pink. I tried to follow the curve of this, but also follow the curve going this way. So you have both different curves that are being followed with the shape of the roof. That's how you end up with this very nice shape. Most of the lighting in the build is done either using end stone rods, in the case of the gazebo and the bridge, but most of it is with the ochre frog lights, and I used both of those to create the chandelier in the middle. These benches, kind of basic. I just use spruce because I didn't want to use cherry for everything, and I thought spruce is a nice neutral, normal wood tone. Moving on from the gazebo, let's take a look at the lighting for the park. I just made it out of cherry wood, and I used the ochre frog lights again. Just a simple stone pillar and then some fence posts. Pretty simple stuff. Now let's move on to the bridge. Now this one was quite a doozy to make, but we got there in the end. I used spruce for the bottom because I didn't want the entire thing to be cherry wood. With this nice soft arches, again right here, but down here more right here with the cherry wood, and again with another soft arch going over this way, very shallow arch. In terms of detailing, you just kind of have to play around with things until they look right. And a lot of the time you just get interesting patterns when you run into problems. I had a problem with trying to replicate the archway at the beginning all the way through the archway going up. They were conflicting because there were spots where I couldn't have a stair that I had in the original because, where is it? Yeah, a stair that I had in the original because it doesn't work on every single layer. And then what you get is you have to improvise, but that actually ends up making it better in the end, in my opinion. Moving on to the next thing, I wanted this to be a kind of authentic park that you might see in real life. So I, of course, included a playground. Because playgrounds have a lot of colorful plastics, I just use all the different colorful woods. And then I used polished blackstone for the floor bits, because if you look at an actual picture of a playground, that is what it looks most similar to. You have that kind of black grate. In terms of actual features of the playground, do not do slides. This one only works because it's straightforward, and it also kind of looks terrible. That's why we only have one slide, and then I used different elements for the rest of it. For example, this very chunky swing with the little jumpy things. We have a nice staircase going down. We have the rock climbing, and we have the little loopy climby thing. The last non-tree feature of the park is, of course, the bathrooms. I could have made a fancy structure like the bridges, but I wanted it to look more authentic, like a real park you'd see in real life. So we have a simple box with a flat roof. And if you look inside, we have, yeah, we're just gonna go look at the trees instead. Yeah, that's all that there is to see in the bathroom. Nothing to worry about. Um, these trees are the star of the show. It wouldn't look like it, but it's actually just the same 5 trees rotated and copy pasted all over the park. The thing that really makes these trees unique, in my opinion, makes it really look like a cherry tree, is the trunk. Because the trunk, instead of just going straight up and going into the branches like a regular tree, I had it have a thinner trunk. Especially even at the bottom, it's kind of thin except for the root bits going out. And then I had it go to the side several times. This one's not the best example. I don't like this one as much. Um, this one. Let's look at this one. I connected them a lot of times only by stairs and slabs and things like that, or even I'll put it at an extra angle, so it's kind of far away, and you get this kind of twisting feel that you're familiar with cherry trees. And then I also use crimson planks as an accent material because it's most similar to the bark of the cherry tree. So it's something to keep in mind. The accent material that you use for the trees to give it some extra shape is not always the same wood as the actual trunk and the actual tree is. Because custom trees are quite tricky to get the hang of, I'm going to show you the process of making one of these, and I'm going to make one from scratch with you right now. You always start with the trunk, and the trunk should always be just a little bit wider than the rest of it. I'll choose this as the main top portion. This is the part that goes up, but you also have probably like 2 or 3 offshoot trunk bits going off to the side. And then, usually I do the roots first, and I just go into the ground. You can even come up and then go back down, although usually I do this with slabs. In fact, let's do that right now. Usually just to make it a little bit more irregular, I make the trunk a little bit more misshapen. You can do that by adding little bits to the sides or on top of these just to make the thick part of the trunk a little bit wider. I'm going to slim it down a little bit from this. This is probably good. Then you just go up a few blocks at a time before you shift the trunk over by 1 block and continue up again. After you do that for about 3 sections of the trunk, you're going to want to branch it off into all of the branches. You want to be as random as possible when you're placing the branches, but it is important to know that the branches generally tend to go upwards. Something I didn't used to do, but I'm going to start doing now, is you want to make sure that you have one branch going from where you stop the trunk going straight up. Otherwise, you'll end up with it just kind of being really flat on the top. You can see that with a few of these trees, like this one, for example. Whereas you expect a tree to usually have more of a triangle-ish shape. You always want to make sure you have these little 1-block offshoots. That's what's really going to give it that nice branchy feel. Makes it feel really irregular. After that, you're just going to come through and replace random things with slabs and stairs. Now it's on to the hardest part, which is placing the leaves. This is both the most tedious and the trickiest part to get right. There's just kind of a method that you get to. Usually I start by taking all the little offshoots and surrounding them with leaves. That's a very good starting point. Once you've got that done, you just kind of stick the leaves onto the trees, onto the branches, but you always want to make sure that you're doing more connections by a diagonal than just straight face to face. The more diagonals you have and the more gaps you have in the tree, the more space the leaves have to breathe, and the lighter the tree looks in the end. You don't want a very clumpy tree all the time. If you ever find a branch that just doesn't fit, you can always remove it later. For example, this one, it was kind of making it too flat along this edge, whereas I want it to kind of curve inwards as it goes to the top, so I had to get rid of it. You want to make sure you're placing leaves from every angle. I've been placing leaves from the top and the sides, but I haven't been placing leaves from the inside or the bottom very much. So you just have to remember to go through and thicken it from the inside and make sure that the bottom looks good. The bottom looks good, especially because that's the angle that everyone's going to be looking at it from. And there we go. We have a finished cherry tree. This is the same process I used to make all of these trees. For the big tree in the middle, I tried to follow the same formula I did for this, but scaled up. I started with a kind of hemisphere at the bottom, and then I cut that to shape and took roots out of it. And then all I did was I used a brush with a sphere on it to create this kind of winding trunk going all the way up through this way, and then I split it in two. Then I just went by afterwards and I reshaped it to look more less like a bunch of spheres packed together and more like an actual tree trunk. Then specifically for cherry trees, this is a good idea. I made these kind of offshoot branches going out all the way up to the top before you get to the main branches at the top. Instead of just placing random accent pieces at random to change it up, I tried to follow a method so it's not just all over the place. I made these kind of veins going up the tree made of the crimson wood. In terms of these offshoot branches towards the bottom with all these leaves on it, I just used the same leaf placing method as I did over here, but that is not the case for the branches at the top. Here to the top, we have a very different branch leaf placing method. I tried to do the same leaf placing strategy I used on the small trees for the big trees at the top, and it's just not worth it. It's just too much, and you don't see any of those details. Like, it does none of this irregularity matters up here because you're looking at it from so far away. What you really need to do, and what I did towards more the bottom, is you need to spam a lot of leaves and just break a few of them. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. I think we covered everything there is to talk about in this build. I hope you got something useful out of it, like how to place the leaves on a tree, or the different shapes that you can use when building little things like this gazebo back here.